Okay, so I'm gonna do a laser cut reshell real quick. So typically what happens, this is a popular key that tends to break. So it basically broke on the side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it into another shell. We're gonna take the internal compartments into it, and then we're gonna recut this laser portion. So this is a stronger, more durable one. So what we're gonna do is, if you notice in this type, the chip is actually separate. This is the chip on this key right there. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna transport it over from the old one, and then we're gonna go ahead and insert it into this little compartment right here. This is what allows the car to start. If you do not have this, the vehicle will not start. And because we're just doing a reshell, we don't need to reprogram everything. The key is already programmed to the vehicle. This is the remote portion. So keys are made up of two parts: the transponder chip, which allows you to start the car, and then the remote that allows you to lock and unlock in the trunk, and also the panic button. So simply, we take the chip out. Sometimes it's stuck in here, so we have to like pry this portion open. Thankfully, this one's easy and it slips right out. But you have to break this and carefully take out the chip. I use needle nose pliers. And so what you do is you take the remote over. Always test the remote to make sure it's working beforehand. So this just tests frequency. You can see the light coming on. You can tell that it's working. Also heard the vehicle outside. So you take it, you transport this portion over right in there. It's nice and snug. And this chip with the holster, you put face down. There's a hole right there for that, and you just insert it like that. You want to make sure that this portion is nice and fluid so it's not getting stuck anywhere. So I test the buttons. Sometimes this part is snug, so I adjust that. So once I do that, and there's different types of keys. This one, you just pop on and it stays on nice and tight. Like that. Make sure it's nice and snug. I always like to test it again just to make sure. Buttons feel good. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the laser cutting portion now. Okay, now I'm gonna show how to cut a laser key. These are laser keys. There's two types. Well, there's probably about 3 different types. This one is cut on the exterior. This is a Honda or an Acura type key. So this is a laser type. You'll see it's blocky like that. So it's going to be cutting this portion right here. So this is a laser cut machine. Left side is where the customer's key goes. This, if you notice right here, there's a tracer right there. Might be able to see it better in the other video, but there's a tracer right here. And then this is the drill bit that is going to cut the new blank laser key. Okay, so first off, you want to take a tip stop. This tip stop, there's 2 sort of grooves right here. You put the tip stop at the far end one, and this is gonna stop the tip of the key so that they're both placed at the exact same distance or depth in. You'll notice there's a flat area on both sides of the jaw. It allows you to put the key in like that. You want to make sure it is flat. So I'm putting pressure down that way to make sure it's flat like that. I take out the tip stop, I put it on this side, and then I do the exact same thing. Put pressure down, making sure that it is flat so when it cuts well. So always make sure you have your protective goggles on. Putting that on, make sure that you don't get any of the metal shavings in your eyes. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn on the machine and we're gonna start cutting the key. I start from the right and I go around this way. So we're doing counterclockwise. Start from the right, go to the left. And the reason why is because this is a type of key that, based on the drill bit, it affects the cutting of the key. So I'll show you right now. I start at the left, I go around, putting pressure down. You'll see my right hand right here, or my left hand right here. I'm putting pressure with my 2 fingers and I'm controlling it with my hand right here. The right side, I'm pushing pressure down The tip stop is what's stopping it from going too far. And all I do is I take that tip stop, I'm really looking at this side, and I'm gonna trace around the key, putting pressure down, not going too fast, not too slow. You do it too slow, you'll sort of not melt the metal, but it's not as clean of a cut. So I'm going through, cutting around, tracing it carefully, cleaning up this side, go around carefully, I'm lifting off. I come in from the side, it makes it easier to cut. So I come in from the side, and I go down like that, making sure I cut that. I'm controlling a lot with the left hand, okay? So I cut around, tracing it. And then what I'll do is I'll clean it up. I'll go through it again just to make sure that I cut it well. Tracing over, make sure it's nice and clean. Before we flip it over, then cut on the other side. Okay, let the drill bit stop, take out the key. I'm getting a flat file like this, and I'm just going to deburr this a bit on the edges just to clean it up, and I'll do some post cleanup afterwards as well, but we're just going to clean it up like that. Okay, so now take a little, I have a paintbrush, and I just dust off this side so we can make sure it goes on flat. We're flipping this over, and then we're going to use that tip stop again right here. Make sure it's nice and flat again. If not, it'll mess up the cut. Nice and flat, tightening it here, don't over tighten. Taking out the tip stop, and we're ready to cut the other side. I'm mainly looking at the left side. I'm looking at this side. Not too worried about this too much. I will look over a little bit, but I'm looking at the left side to make sure I'm tracing it well. Coming in from the side, there you go. Okay, now I'm going to trace over everything again, make sure it's nice and flat. One thing I would actually suggest is, in this instance, you notice I only flipped over the right side. I only flipped over this key. And that's okay, that'll work. But if keys are really worn down, if the original key is really worn down, what you want to do is flip over both sides. It's the same cut, but if one side is worn down more than the other, it could affect how the key is, just how smooth it is. So just tracing over one more time just to make sure it's nice and clean. And it looks pretty good. Okay, wait till the drill bit stops, take this out. I'm gonna clean this and deburr it just manually with my hand. The edges right here is sort of what I'm looking at, and I wanna clean that up. You'll also clean it up a little bit once you insert this key into the actual ignition itself. And I'll show you how to do that. You'll notice on the sides, because you deburr it, there's a lot of metal shavings. So I angle it, so I try to take that angle down a little bit, just so it's not so sharp anymore, so it's a little smoother. Most of the times you'll make adjustments on this side and this side because of, once you cut it, it almost flares it out a little bit because of the shavings. So now I do the angles, the edges, and then I'm gonna flatten down the sides a bit. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it outside. We're gonna test fit it into the customer's doorway, and then also the ignition to make sure it goes in smoothly and it functions just like an original key. It feels pretty smooth, and we're gonna go outside now and we're gonna test fit it into the car, and we'll make any other adjustments that we need. I'll take a little file with me as well, just so that it's a smoother and easier process. Since I already have it on me, I can make adjustments on the fly. But most of the adjustments you'll make is actually on these two sides right here. But you want to keep it nice and pretty looking. Don't scuff up this part or this side, just really taking off the metal shavings or deburring it on the side. All right, let's go outside. Okay, so we're outside right now. What we want to do, still have my goggles on. What you want to do is you want to make sure you bring out the customer's key as well. Test it first, because a lot of times, because it's worn down, you don't know how it's going to perform. So you want to know, like, hey, are you cutting a key well? And so you do that by testing their original key first. Because if it doesn't turn, then you didn't mess up. It was the key in itself. The alarm's going off. We're testing the alarm, but it goes in really smoothly. So we're going to test out now our key that we cut. What we want to do is we want to insert it in a couple times. It'll feel stiff. Don't force it. But it feels stiff right now, and most likely what I want to do is I'm going to take down some of the sides, and then if it still feels rough, I'm going to recut it on the laser cut machine. Maybe we didn't get a little bit, but what you want to do, it will feel stiff in the beginning. Try not to force it, flip it around. It feels stiff, and so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to shave. Literally, I'm just taking down the sides a bit. Make sure it's even. So I'm going, and I'm shaving both sides evenly. Same thing, don't take off too much, but I want to make sure it's flat, it's even, and I'm not just doing too much on one side. Okay, so I took down the sides a bit, and let's see how it feels this time. Beautiful, feels great. That's all I had to do. That stiffness, don't force it, but file down the sides a bit, and it just feels perfect. Remote still works. Now you test it here first. So you basically deburr a little bit by doing this, because there's a little bit of the metal that you didn't get off with the filing. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna test it on the ignition. We jump inside the car and we want to test it. I would say go with the customer's original key first. Get a feel for how it is, so you can, this is the baseline of how it should feel, right? So now you take this key, put it in a couple times, flip it around, do the same thing. And when you test the key, make sure it works on both sides. So you just try it with this side, then try it with that side. Because sometimes the cut might be a little different, so you have to check on both. Turns right on, feels great. I flipped it over 180, I put it in again, I turned it onto the on position. I didn't start it yet, but it feels really good. So now what I want to do, because we don't have to reprogram, this is already programmed, we're going to test to see if this thing actually turns on, okay? We have the chip inside. If that chip is not in here, it will not start. So you have to make sure you put it in, okay? So foot on the brake, ignition, turns right over. And that's pretty much it. That is a reshell of the key. We pretty much duplicated this on the laser cutting machine. We took all the insides of the old key, put it into here. We took the chip and the remote portion, we cut it, we test fitted it into the key on the outside the door, and then also the inside as well. You have to make sure you test both and make sure you flip it over on both sides to make sure it works well, so that the customer doesn't come back later on saying there's an issue. Aside from that, that's how you duplicate, that's how you reshell, laser cut, and also test fit.